Today, we met with Dr. Jim Neely. For those that bitch about masks or shutdowns, in Missouri, vote for a guy that will solve your problems. Today is some highlights of what I heard today. He has my vote. I hope he has yours. Thank you.
It seems as if we have so many people that are bought and paid for, and they're more worried about their next election than they are cutting the sales tax on those items I mentioned about, or management of the system that needs to be rethunked. Yes, sir.
So the governor, when he speaks in January, he says, okay, we got to do the Wayfair fix. Everybody knows what the Wayfair fix is. That allows items that are sold on the internet to be taxed, sales tax. He says we got to do the Wayfair fix bill this year. But the correct thing for him to say was, okay, we got to do the Wayfair fix bill this year, but we got to tack on to that an income tax increase. Go for it, Jim.
You know, it's always about the money. You know, where's the accountability? You know, where's the respect? Where's the relationship between the people that go to work every day, or the people that have gone to work, the people that have been there? Where's the relationship between that, the people, and the elected folks? Where is the relationship? And it's sour. It's sick. It's ill. What's happened? Because there's a lack of performance. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
The relationship is broken, and I think sometimes when it's complicated, life has become complicated. You kind of give up. You know, where's the entrepreneurial spirit? My wife's a nurse. Let's just say that in our years, we'd like to open up a nursing home. Very simple process, take care of people. We know what we would be doing. But you know what? I can't do that because of regulation. I got to get permission from the state of Missouri. Well, guess who controls that certificate of need process? I bet Don Bedell and others who have great influence, and Don Bedell, I've worked for Don Bedell in some distant capacity for 30 years as the medical director of a nursing home. I've never met the man. He owns who knows how many nursing homes in the state of Missouri. But I bet he's funding many Senate campaigns, particularly one individual who's on the Certificate of Need Committee, commission, another commission, we'll get into commissions here. But I bet he's funding this one particular person who's running for state Senate's campaign, so he can keep him there on that committee to pick and choose who gets contracts for nursing home beds. That's wrong. There ought to be competition. I like competition in life. That's how you improve things, and you could probably lower the cost of a lot of things if there was competition.
The Republicans don't like competition no matter what they say, because when I went to our local office, and I'm an elected official too, I'm actually a committeeman, they would not allow us to put his signs in the Republican office because they were only supporting the incumbents. And that's something we want to change the Republican Party. So I just want to let you know that in the St. Louis area especially, you've got this Gestapo of established Republicans, and they're trying to keep other people out, and it's really unfortunate. It really is.
You know, this, it was interesting on the way here. My wife was looking at Facebook, and she said she had a request from a gentleman who I served with in the House, and he left 2 years ago, and he now is the Director of Energy, state of Missouri. Well, why is he reaching out to my wife now? I just thought it was interesting. You know, I'm not a conspiracy nut or whatever, but there are a lot of people thinking that we have gained significantly. Back in March, we were at 30% on some polling, and we don't do polling, but back then, we were at 30%. I think the governor shot himself in the foot a few times since then. I mentioned my time in the military. You know, one of the things I learned in the military was how to call in helicopters. I bet I know how to call in the National Guard, if you catch my drift. You know, I'm all in on protecting people and their property. Yes, ma'am.
Now, protecting people on their property, I live in St. Charles, and of course, as you know, Friday night there was, it's okay to protest, but when you shut down Highway 70, and now there's on social media, there's a riffraff of how they unlawfully arrested us, and we need to get to St. Charles, and what's your take on that one?
No, I think they want to get to St. Louis where Kim Gardner is, because she'll protect them. No, I'm being a little humorous there, sarcastic or whatever. You know, yeah, you don't do that. That's wrong. You know, that's infringing on other people's freedoms. That's wrong. So it's wrong.
Who can stop it? Who's the one who's going to go in there and say, hey, no more?
You know, I don't claim to be the sharpest knife in the drawer, but I think somehow, as I watch all these different governors that they have, they seem to have a lot of bodyguard type people around them. So my approach to this is, say the couple in St. Louis, I'm going to go there, and I bet they're going to have an entourage of people, a cadre of people. They're going to go along with me, and I'm not leaving until we get some problems solved. So that's the same approach I would take to whatever. My wife may not like that, but that's the approach I will take. If I don't know how to do it otherwise, I'll be there, and I'll be a nuisance to the people who are creating the nuisance. So I don't know that I answered your question adequately, but I'm going to find a way, because there's respect for you, and these people need to have that.
How long would it have taken you to attend to the riots in the city? It took Parson 5 days when they were over.
As soon as I became aware, but you know what? Even that, where was Parson with Ferguson? Wasn't he there? Did he learn anything from that event?
Yeah.
You know, if you don't learn from the past, you've got some, well, you've got some issues. I was going to use some other word.
Yeah. Right. It would have been immediate.
It would have been immediate, you bet. And in the same way with those folks, when you see that national spectacle, my goodness, pretty sad leadership. Makes me wonder what he was like as a sheriff. Anyway, you know, it's been hard for me to call out my own party. But, you know, maybe as Reagan said, maybe my party's leaving me, but boy, there's no other option out there. But all I know, maybe that gentleman was right that I ran into in Lexington. We've now gone from conservative to liberal or progressive or whatever. Change the name and whatever. But anyway, along the way, this is where I am. You know, I'm out to solve the system failures. I remember running into Jay Ashcroft in, I don't know, right after he was elected, and there was some concern over dead people voting. And I said, Jay, this is the way you do this, is that I can write some legislation to tell you, or your department, to use that automated death certificate system, and just send that out to where the person died and suspect that person's on the voter rolls. You just push the button, and then they can remove that name. He says, well, that makes sense. Let's do that. Instead of writing legislation, you need somebody who wants to solve the system failure. And somebody asked me, what are you going to do the first day? I said, I'm going to ask all the directors, if I have the opportunity sooner, I'm going to ask them to come in and justify their existence. And then justify the existence of the different layers of the onion. How do you justify it? And not only do they need to justify it to me, you know what? I'll probably have the front line people there, the people that do the work, and listening to them, and then I'm going to turn to them and say, what do you think? Are there too many layers? Are you really looking out for the people doing the work? Because I contend not. We had Brian Spencer up in St. Charles. He's an educator, teacher. I come from teachers. My dad, oh, here, this one is fun, because my wife will like this, because she kind of butts in with my brother on some issues. My dad, I think he was in education close to 40 years, maybe 35 years. And he said, Jim, I bet you don't send your kids to public school. That's coming from somebody who started in the one-room schoolhouse, taught, principal, superintendent. What was he telling me? He was seeing a system failure in education. My brother and sister are teachers, retired teachers, public school teachers, their spouses, retired school teachers. I had aunts and uncles, retired school teachers. My brother, he doesn't see that failure in the system, but I think there is a failure. And the failure is we're not empowering the teacher. I remember as a kid going with my dad to his elementary school building, and he had that cool little porcelain deal that we'd run the label that you'd see on the front of your book. And it was fun for me because I was doing this, and I'd get that label, let it down, and then I'd slap it on that front page. Then you'd write your name, the kids would write their name, that this was Jim Neely's book, or 4th grade, or whatever it was. And anyway, I remember reading that was Minton Hupland was one of the publishers, and Prentice was another publisher. Well, as time goes by, I hear those companies are now creating the test, the MAP test, and other testing testing materials for the schools. And they're the ones that are telling these teachers, or Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, how to teach, instead of the teachers. Because I thought they went to school to get certified to be a teacher. Same way with principals and superintendents or certified administrators. But no, it seems like they take direction from DESE or someplace else. You know, if you get back and you empower the teacher to be that teacher, well, you'll like this one. I sat by my 3rd grade teacher a lot. I sat on one side of her desk, and Gary Moore sat on the other side. I think she must have liked us. Or maybe I talked too much in class. I'm not real sure. Anyway, her name was Oreen Zimmerman. And I was down at Grandview, Missouri, South Kansas City. Oreen was from Paynesville, Missouri. I would go home with her on weekends. Now, that wouldn't happen today, your 3rd grade teacher taking you home. She had a farm, and I loved going to her farm. Apparently I wasn't too bad, even though it did talk too much in class. But, you know, if you empower the teacher, you have good relationships, parent, teacher, you empower that teacher, they're going to go get into the environment and solve those problems. But here we live in a world where we make the relationship between the teacher and the parents and the kids challenging. If we get back to problem solving in the classroom, things should get better. We don't need all the little nuances and spending money out here and there and whatever. You know, I'm all into choice, competition, but, you know, when you don't empower the police officer, when you don't empower the teacher, when you don't empower the entrepreneurial spirit, when you're afraid of a lawsuit, if somebody slips in your driveway and they're going to nail you, you know, and it's not your fault. What are we doing as a society? More division. We kept the courtroom with families, that they're parents of kids. Where are we solving problems? But it seems like everything has become divisive. We need to grab each other's hand and solve some problems. And that would be my approach, solving problems. It isn't worried. I'm not worried about my next election. You can tell that I've got some age on me. And my lovely wife and I, there are other things that we can do. But we're still fighting for that little girl who said a lot of adults had let her down. And you know what? It's not just that little girl. There's a lot of other people, like people here today, that have been let down.
I just want to say something. I've been listening to this man for a while. Now, we've all grown up with this, people that run for office, and they're always telling us, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And he just says, I'm going to solve problems. That's all I'm going to do is solve problems. And that makes so much more sense because every time they say, I'm going to do this and this, they end up creating more problems instead of solving them. And I just like the simple fact that he says, I'm just here to solve problems. I think that is just extraordinary.
Let me tell you one of my stories early on. I did have a legislative assistant who was, she read an article out of the Kansas City Star, or Times, whatever it is. It's Kansas City Star in my book. But anyway, it was about a gentleman who was on the sexual offender registry since the 80s, before the sexual offender registry even existed. He had gone through a divorce. He was awarded the children. Awarded, or whatever. The courts had adjudicated that he was to have the kids. Mom was not happy. She got the kids to say that Dad was abusing them. So there was an investigation, the Children's Division or whatever, prosecuting attorney got involved and said, you know, we can make this all go away because we can't prove anything. And he said, well, we'll make it go away. He says, you mean there won't be a court and all of this? And he said, and kids won't have to go through it all? He said, I'll do that. I mean, we can kind of get this. So that's the way it was. He had maybe a suspended imposition of sentence, or there may have been, but he was never went to court. Anyway, 6 months later, those kids were back living with him because they took the kids away from him. But they were back, and he continued to raise them. And the kids later said, you know, Mom bribed us. So it was a lie. But here's the kicker. During that time period that he was supposedly on probation, the sexual offender registry came into place, and he had to sign up. He could never go to his kids' events because he was on the sexual offender registry. And I worked with him to get him off. Nixon signed it. He could never go to those games, the school. Tragedy. And he was nervous whenever I was dealing with him. It was almost like he was abused. I saw him in the last month. He was the most relaxed. He still had a little bit of edge on him. But the system beat him down. And I think we do a lot of that. But here's the point. I wanted to address this legislatively, and you can't. Because if I go to my colleagues and say, we need to change this, they'll say, I don't want to get into that because they may use that against me in my next election. Fear of sticking your nose into a situation that might make you look bad, or that's how ugly it is.
So what's the answer for all that?
You know, you need better leadership and people who want to be problem solvers rather than, you know, I look, you know, Harry Truman, he made that statement, he couldn't believe that he was elected to the U.S. Senate when he went in, and he said 6 months later, he wonders how these other people were elected. And you see a lot of that. Some of these people, I don't think they could have a job out there in the private sector. That's scary. They're not, I think they, you see my truck up there? Oh, my sign hides it. You know, if I wanted to, I could have representative plates. I choose not to. In fact, I was stopped one time because I was doing something maybe a little bit inappropriate, speeding, and the highway patrolman said, "How come you don't have representative plates?" I said, "So I'm not real proud to be a representative because we're not very productive." And he laughed. He said, "If I'd have known those were plates, I wouldn't have stopped you." Interesting. That's the world we live in. And some people, they get a lot of thrill out of having those plates. It's not right. You know, you should go down there and want to solve some problems. And we don't have enough people that want to do that. But the other side of that is the House, in particular, the way the rules are made up, it's really the Speaker that controls. One person can hold it all up. And you can work real hard and put on a big show, and you can pass bills, and if you play the game, you can pass a bill, you can pass a task force, a committee. It's going to solve problems like we've got that task force on drug abuse, and look how they've solved all of our drug problems. A little sarcastic, aren't I? Anyway, that's kind of where I'm coming from. So it's really the people, and you kind of look to see if they accomplish things. You know, I think, why did Trump get elected? I think he came off as a person who seemed to accomplish things. We have people in office, and you think, what have they accomplished in life? And I'm not a showman. I don't like the limelight. I just want to solve some problems. And I see this system failure. I want somebody else to have all the glory. Here's a great bill. I had a bill, shared parenting bill. This is funny. I had two ladies come to me from Cape Girardeau back years ago in my first or second term, or first term. These ladies came in and said, "Doc, would you take a look at this? We'd like to have shared parenting. That's where the courts need to start out on family issues." And I said, "Well, first off, why did you come to me?" He said, "You're from Cape Girardeau. Why didn't you go see Kathy Swan or Holly Rader? Those are the two reps out of there." And she said, "Well, we gave it to Kathy Swan last year, but she didn't do anything." I said, "Well, so what's that have to do with me?" I said, "Well, we went to the Children's Division, and we talked to Diane Franklin, who was the chair, and she didn't do anything. And we talked to her LA, legislative assistant, and they said to come and see you." I thought that was kind of nice. Anyway, so I put together the bill, and I didn't get it filed. I just had it drafted, and it was ready, what we call greenback. Holly Rader, that was one of the two that I mentioned, out of Cape Girardeau. She came to me and said, "Doc, what do you think about me handling this bill?" I said, "Great. If you want to, it's a good bill." She said, "Well, I think so too." And I said, "Well, we need to get over to the Senate because it was about the time of the last day of filing." So she got it over there. The next thing I know, Kathy Swan, the other person out of Cape Girardeau, she filed the bill. Now, how did she know that? It didn't bother me other than that's the behavior of the people in the system. When you have people that will step on somebody else's toes to benefit themselves, you have a problem. Anyway, that bill moved forward. It never did get passed, but I suspect that if I ran the bill, I would have gotten it passed. But anyway, that's it. It's the type of people that we have. And interestingly enough, I mentioned those two people, Holly Rader and Kathy Swan. Watch them. They're in a Senate race against each other down in Cape Girardeau, and I bet it's quite the cat fight. Anyway, so but it's about the types of people, and to be perfectly blunt, my time in Jeff City, what a waste of time. If it wasn't for the Right to Try bill, there's a poster also in every public, in all the restrooms and all the schools that says if you're being abused, call this number. That was my bill. The parental access motion, that if you're not seeing your children, all you got to do is go to the circuit clerk and file a motion, and you should be seen by the judge in 30 days without having to see an attorney. There's a few other bills along the way that I'm pleased, but it isn't about the bills, it's about accomplishment and making lives better for some people. We don't do enough of that, and we have the ability to do that, but we make it a bigger deal, a big show, and it's all about self-promotion. So I don't have an answer, but it's about productivity, and that's where I'm coming from. And we have a lot of people, I think, who don't know what it is to be productive. As a physician, I try to be productive. I try to do the right thing, and I walked away very satisfied. And I think that was one of the problems, not the problem, one of the issues where I worked 7 days a week because I really enjoyed what I was doing. And going up there, I kind of shake my head. Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's right. The tribal with the champions. I had a relative that died from ALS,
Uh-huh.
and that was before that bill got passed. And the doctor told her husband that if he could have did that experimental drug on her, that she passed away, it would have extended her life. It would have made her days that she had a lot better.
Yeah, you don't fear of suffocating on your own chest. That's the fear of ALS. You don't have the muscles to raise your chest, and it's the fear of suffocation. You know, you're alert, so that's the worry. Yes, sir. Yeah. You know, it's about the comfort. Yes, ma'am. Well, that's that legislation that.
No, I'm just saying it so they know what you're saying. We want to make sure they hear it. Is there a lot of, what was it you said?
Is there a lot of child sex trafficking in Missouri? And if there is, what can we do?
Sex trafficking. I personally don't know of that, but it seems to be out there, and I don't know where we are. I'm not in the law enforcement world or in the courtroom, but in the world that we're living in, it wouldn't surprise me, and it certainly needs to be looked at, and it needs to be stopped. But you know, we need to live in a world of law and order, and it needs to be addressed, and I suspect it's true, because of the behavior of the world. That's it. Yes, ma'am.
There's a lot, and there's a legislation now that it's 14 and over, but they have to reduce the age because now there's children that are being trafficked that are 7 and under. So they're changing some legislation with that. I'm involved with the Covering House, which is an actual safe haven for young women. So it's this is a kind of a funnel through Missouri, through St. Louis for something like that, and it's a big concern that my family has been involved with to try to help offset it. So it is scary what's going on that people don't really know about.
You see, I don't have the background directly on that because I no longer work the emergency room or whatever. But that little girl that I was telling you about, she was being sexually abused by her mom. Okay? So we're living in strange times. The behaviors out there. We've got a lot of social issues, and we're going to cut the children's world. I think we need to cut some other issues out there. You know, we need prosecuting attorneys who want to do their job. We have a lot of, I bet law enforcement could tell us hours, weeks, months about the failure of prosecuting attorneys. Yes, sir.
I just want to say a lot of people, what he was saying before, a lot of people, they'll form these committees, but they don't do anything. It's just feel-good committees and they don't accomplish it, and it comes from the top. If the top doesn't say, you got to get your butts going, they'll just continue to have the committees and go through the motions, and then they go out and tell the voters the next election, look what I'm on, look what I did, but it doesn't mean they're doing anything. Would that be correct?
You nailed it. Exactly. It's such a, I don't know that I talked about the takedown of Eric Greitens. Let me talk about that.
So what did happen there?
Pardon me?
So what did happen there?
Wasn't about it there.
You know, you'd like to view that leadership is honest with you and honorable. They're not. They'll use you. Someone will remind me to talk about appointments. Another issue. Let me stick with one subject or I'll never get there. I remember the night of Eric Greitens giving the State of the State address. And there's a photograph of Eric Greitens speaking, and you saw Mike Parson there behind him, and he had a look on him of disgust, I think. I've never said this before. That evening, I got a phone call from Todd Richardson, who was on the other side of Eric Greitens, next to Mike Parson. That evening, I received a phone call from Todd Richardson, who was the speaker that I stood up against on the Manny's Medicaid. He said, "Doc, I want you to run a committee on kids." I said, "Great. I'll be anxious to work with some folks on that." And anyway, I thought that was an interesting phone call. And as time went by, there was some, I guess actually before that, there was some conversation that we were seeing about, and some of you probably know this better, back in December, Kim Gardner had some issues that she filed some motions, but let's jump right on into when there was a committee formed by Todd Richardson, the speaker, and he had a committee, and this was all talked about out on the floor, that we're going to have Jay Barnes, who's an attorney out of Cole County, to be the chair of this investigation committee of Eric Greitens. And there's all these accolades about how good Jay Barnes is, and Jay liked to talk. And then the vice chair was a guy named Don Phillips, a retired highway patrolman, likable guy. And so then the accolades came down from each other about how good they were, and then we saw all the people on the committee. So they started meeting and doing their investigation, and then it became an issue into our Republican caucus meetings where they were talking about this investigation and how ugly it was, and that we got a lot of problems. And then there were some other things that came down, and I don't remember exactly what, but it was putting the pressure on Eric Greitens to resign or get out of there or impeaching or whatever. And I don't remember all those details in particular. If I'm elected, I'm going to get all the details. I promise you that. But anyway, Eric Greitens resigns, and now Jay Barnes is no longer in the House, but he's an attorney. He's now the attorney for Google for the state of Missouri. Very lucrative position. The vice chair is now the director of the parole board. Now here he is, a retired highway patrolman, spent 8 years in the House. Who's going to get a pension out of that? 2 pensions. Going to get a Social Security pension. Now he's over here in the parole board chair, makes $100,000 a year, and he can take his years in the House, because that's the way they do it, they fix themselves. He can take his 8 years in the House, slap that onto his years over there on the parole board. He's going to make more money probably from just that than he did as a career highway patrolman. Who's looking out for who? And why was he appointed? Why was Eric Schmidt appointed to the Attorney General's position? Why was Mike Keel appointed as the Lieutenant Governor? Why was Scott Fitzpatrick appointed as the Treasurer, State Treasurer? All those are very interesting appointments. And all those people on the committee, what did they get out of being on the committee? They all benefited. I can go on and on. Now, this is corruption in its finest, and that in itself, if I wasn't the only guy in the Capitol who was standing up to this, you have two people. You have those that are ready to get the hell out of Jeff City, and there's a number of those, or the ones that want to stay there, and they don't want to offend the establishment. Don't want to talk. This is how bad it is, folks. And if I didn't stand up, then you would have these other individuals that are in the race, and no telling what they're all about, but I have a sneaking suspicion they would join in on the establishment and just be the same old business. They don't have it in them. Because you look